All right, for this video, we're going to go through some of the basic statistics vocabulary that we're going to be using throughout this entire semester. So some of the vocabulary terms that we have are population. When we talk about a population, that is the entire group that we want to study. So for example, if we're doing a study of a college campus, all of the students at that campus would be our population. Doesn't matter if they're enrolled in one class or a bunch of classes. If they're taking a class at that campus, they are going to be part of the population. A sample is a subset of that population, and those are the people typically that we use in our survey or our experiment or whatever it is we're doing. We use samples when our populations are really large and it would be very expensive or difficult to be able to sample every single person in our population. Individuals are the source of our information. These can be people or objects. So again, if we're doing a survey of a college campus, we would probably be talking to people. But if on the college campus we were interested in the vehicles that are parked in the parking lots and looking at what type of vehicles people are driving to get to their classes, then the individuals there would be the cars in the parking lots. And variables are the characteristics of the individuals or objects. So that could be things like what year of college they're in, how many classes they're taking, what is their gender, what color is the car, what is the make of the car, lots of different things like that. So I have a little diagram here that goes through this in a picture. So population, that's the largest circle, and then we can see from inside the population circle, we have a sample being taken. So it's people that are in the population, but it's not everybody. And then from that sample, we have individual people. And then from those individual people, we have variables. So more terms that we get from the individuals is data. So once we have all of the information from our individuals, that is collected and it forms the data. Data can be numerical or non-numerical. Numerical data would be like, how many credits are you taking this semester? Or how many siblings do you have? Or what is your height? Or it could be non-numerical. So that would be a question like, what is the color of your car? Or what is your gender? And then data varies from individual to individual. That is the whole reason of collecting data and looking at it, is that it's different for every single person. A parameter is a numerical summary of the population. So if we go through and we manage to be able to get information from every single person, a parameter is a way to summarize that information. So when we get the census taken every 10 years and they come out with numerical summaries from the census, they are giving us the best that they can of a parameter. So when they talk about like the average household size in America, they're getting that from census information, and a census is a collection of everybody in the US, or their best attempt to get everybody in the US. And the summary that they give us from that of like the average household size is a summary of everybody that they collected the data on for the entire United States. So when we talk about anything that comes from the US Census that's done every 10 years, that is treated as a parameter value because it's a summary of the entire population. A statistic, on the other hand, is a numerical summary of a sample. So it's not looking at data from the entire population. It's only looking at data from that smaller sample that we were able to take, something that was a little more manageable. So that would be something like if we are looking at a car commercial and the car commercial is telling us the average miles per gallon. They are not basing that off of every single vehicle that they've ever created, of that model, they're looking at a subset of them, and they found the average miles per gallon of the subset of those vehicles. So they looked at, maybe 100 of them and figured out what the average miles per gallon are of 100 of the vehicles, but not all of them. That's one example. So then we have our variables, and there are different types of variables. So variables are one of the aspects that we can collect from people. And I like to think of variables as the question that I ask the person to then get an answer. So the first type of variable that we can collect from people are qualitative variables. These are also known as categorical variables, and they will be used, both of those terms, interchangeably throughout the course. So make sure you understand that qualitative and categorical, those mean the same things. So if I ask a question and the response is something that can be classified into a category or is an uncountable characteristic, that is considered a qualitative variable. So these are things like gender, ethnicity, education, hair color, car color, type of pet that you own, favorite football team, things like that. These are also anything that is subjective and open to interpretation. So, who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl this year? That is subjective. Or what do you think the score is going to be of the Super Bowl this year? That is also very subjective. The other type of variable is a quantitative variable. So if I ask a question and the response to my question is a numerical value, then that is a quantitative variable. And it's very important that these numerical values are values that could be added or subtracted, and the result has meaning. So what I mean by that is if I take my height and I subtract my best friend's height, that would tell us who is taller and by how much. Or if I take my weight and I add my best friend's weight, it would tell us what our combined weight is if we were to, go on a ride that had a weight maximum to it. Not all numerical responses can be added or subtracted, and the result has meaning. One example of that is zip code. Our zip codes are numerical, but if I add or subtract two zip codes together, it doesn't tell me anything about the zip codes of the people or where they live or anything like that. So that's one example. There are a lot of other examples out there that I just want you to kind of think about, and you'll see some of those as you work through the problems that you have to do. So examples of quantitative variables would be like the grade that you have in a class, and that would be the numerical grade, like the percentage. If it's letter grade, that would be qualitative. The number of children you have, how many TVs you have in your house, your height, your weight, your hand size, anything with a numerical value that's either counted or measured. So then within those quantitative, notice how I just said it's anything that's either counted or measured. So we actually have a way to distinguish what if it's counted, what if it's measured. And that's with our types of quantitative variables. So if it's a counted thing, we call it a discrete variable. So discrete variables are things that take on a finite or countable number of values. So those are going to be things like number of children. I'm going to skip over money because that one gets a little funky. Some people consider it discrete. Some people consider it the other one. It just depends on what scale you're talking about money. It should technically be discrete because you can count how many pennies you have, but we tend to talk about money on such a wide scale that it gets treated as the next type. Anyways, I said I was going to skip it and then I didn't. Anyways, so number of children, I can count how many children I have. How many cars do I own? I can count how many cars I own. How many cats do I own? I own two. If I were to say I own 2.5 cats, well, that doesn't make sense. Half of a cat is a dead cat. I either own another cat or I don't own another cat. I cannot have half of a cat. So can't have half cat. And then the other type of variable is a continuous variable. These are the ones that could take on infinitely many values. And typically these are going to be the types of things that we measure. So we measure our heights, we measure our weight, we measure time, we measure temperature. And while we typically talk about like, oh, I'm, 64 inches tall, I'm 67 inches tall, and we stop at the inches, we could get that down to a very precise measurement. So just because we stop at a specific measurement in the scale doesn't mean we couldn't get more precise. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking about, is it discrete or is it continuous? Okay, if it's something that you're measuring, more likely than not, it's going to be continuous. And then I do just have a quick graphic to illustrate the difference. Hopefully you know what these are. The one picture on the left is a Lite-Brite. And so a Lite-Brite is a picture that is created using little pegs. And so you get a very pixelated type of picture because you're using pegs to create the picture. So it's individual little lights creating the picture. And then the one on the right is an Etch-a-Sketch. And in the Etch-a-Sketch, it is creating the picture using an infinitely created line that is never broken. And the only way to, well, you can't break the line. So you're just drawing forever and ever and ever and ever until you shake the thing and then it erases everything. So they have Lite-Brites again in the stores, which is amazing. And they also still have Etch-a-Sketches. So if you're not sure what these are, you can look them up or you can go to Target and look at them. Anywho, those are the big statistic terms that we need to know for this course. So there you go.